Ownership is being stripped from Americans at a rapid pace. And it is. The elite, the pigs, the fat pigs, the sloppy pigs at the top are getting fatter and fatter. They're not smarter than me and you. So what gives them so much money and power? They understand the rules to the game that no one else knows there's even rules for. They don't understand there's rules to this game. And it comes down to something that's actually pretty simple, and it's ownership. Americans are being stripped of their ability to have ownership in anything. You notice how prices are getting more expensive on everything? Inflation seems to have jumped at a rapid pace, something that's really unsustainable. Ownership is becoming something that's very elusive. Do you know who the largest home buyer in the world is right now?
Vanguard.
BlackRock. It's the same thing. It's all relative. The reason why is because that average Americans are not taking ownership of the corner stores. They're not taking ownership of the communities that we once had a big grip on. As that's being stripped away, so is your ability to really have any kind of real influence in the world. Right now, small entrepreneurship still holds the key. But when you think about the next generation of children that are replacing our grandfather's shoes, they don't come with the same disciplines, work ethics, and mindsets that our grandfathers did. And so in replacement of that is a desensitized culture that is really being indoctrinated to think that you will own nothing and be happy. And that is acceptable.
Bro, how often do you think of the Roman Empire?
Every day.
You told me this. This is probably one of the biggest trends in America. I love it. That's what we're talking about today. Why in the hell do you think of the Roman Empire every day?
It's funny. Me and my wife talk about it a lot. And I can't believe this is a trending. I didn't believe him. I don't even know what that means.
Yes.
It's trending.
Minutes ago, I asked off camera. Eric didn't know about this trend. And
Never
it just
heard of
made
it.
me laugh so hard. I was like, bro, how often do you think of the Roman Empire? And he said, every day.
Well,
I do too.
think about what's going on.
Yeah.
Like, I like history.
Yeah.
But I didn't believe it. I didn't know this is a fucking trend.
Well, pull the trend up, man. It's a real trend. It even made...
Yeah, this is... Okay, first of all, this makes me sick just seeing this. Yeah, whatever that is.
This show represents the fall of the American
You know
Empire.
what? Good point.
It does.
This is the reason why I think... This is the
yeah.
type of crap that makes
You
me
watch
think...
The View and you think of the Roman Empire.
This is... You know what? You know another movie that got me? I'm trying to think of the name of it. It was so representative of Hunger Games.
Yeah.
Like everyone dressed in their pink hair and all their... Like while... You know, and Brandon Turner, like we were watching women unbathe while the rest of the world is burning, quite literally.
Yeah.
That movie, Hunger Games, did the same thing. It's stuff like that makes me think of the Roman Empire.
Yeah.
Like anybody that's a student of history should look at what's going on in this country and consider the same thoughts. Here, I'm gonna let this play.
There is this trending topic on TikTok where women are asking the men in their lives one simple but rather bizarre question. Watch.
How often do you think about the Roman Empire?
I guess technically like every day.
Babe, how often do you think about the Roman Empire?
3 times a day.
How often do you think about the Roman Empire?
At least 3 or 4 times a week.
You know, women are always asking, what do men think about? You know, you look at them and they have this like empty look on their face all the time.
Yeah.
Say, what's going on in your mind? And they go, nothing. Well, now we know. It's the Roman Empire.
The Roman Empire.
Yeah, man.
It is the Roman Empire. Because I've been saying this for a while. This does not end well. You know, I was just at a speech thing. I was at a big business mastermind this weekend. Limitless. And there were some incredible speakers. 2 of my favorites. Well, they were all my favorites. But, Andy Frisella, first of all. Like, oh, God, he's so good. Have you ever heard Andy Frisella speak? Like, step up on stage?
Not on the stage, no.
Man, you could feel his raw, like, F-U energy. You know what I mean? Like this doesn't end well. If you just look at math, simple math, and the trajectory of things, we all know how this ends historically. And these women who have no clue, literally no clue, they represent the reason that this topic about the Roman Empire is so important. Because the trajectory of where we're headed historically does not end well. And it's the Roman Empire that is a great catalyst to that thought. Am I wrong?
No, I just saw a post by Jordan Peterson about this entire police force somewhere in Canada, I believe.
I can't watch these women. I'm sorry.
Yeah, pull them off the screen. So he posts, it was something like 100 police officers just abruptly left. And he made this comment to the effect of basically This is what happens when the corruption reaches a certain point. The most noble men leave first.
Damn.
It was chilling. It was seeing like 100 police officers on the same day to resign in some city. Like, it makes me think, like, even with the whole COVID thing, you know, if noble people don't take a stand within medicine and they don't take a stand in all these different historically like bulwarks of reliable industries, or what are we going to do?
Yeah, you know, one of the other speakers that I was referencing earlier that really caught my attention was Cody Sanchez. I don't know if you know who Cody Sanchez is.
Yeah.
Profound speaker, first of all. Her message like cut with like a sharp blade. She was not there to motivate or inspire. No. She was there to like tell the truth. And truth was a big part of her message. But she really talked about the BlackRocks of the world. She talked about how ownership is being stripped from Americans at a rapid pace. And it is. The elite, the pigs, the fat pigs, the sloppy pigs at the top are getting fatter and fatter. She referenced some of the biggest CEOs in the world for these companies like BlackRock. She mentioned Warren Buffett. She went down the list, but she really showcased who these guys are. And the truth is they're no different than me or you. They're not smarter than me and you. So what gives them so much money and power? They understand the rules to the game that no one else knows there's even rules for. They don't understand there's rules to this game. And it comes down to something that's actually pretty simple, and it's ownership. Americans are being stripped of their ability to have ownership in anything. You notice how prices are getting more expensive on everything? Inflation seems to have jumped at a rapid pace, something that's really unsustainable. You look at this little town of Coeur d'Alene where we live. It's so expensive to live here. How can children live and work here and stay in this community? They can't. They're being pushed out. Ownership is becoming something that's very elusive. Do you know who the largest home buyer in the world is right now?
Vanguard?
BlackRock.
BlackRock.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's all relative.
Yeah.
The reason why is because that average Americans are not taking ownership of the corner stores. They're not taking ownership of the communities that we once had a big grip on. As that's being stripped away, so is your ability to really have any kind of real influence in the world. Right now, small entrepreneurship still holds the key, but we're failing at a rapid number. When you think about the next generation of children that are replacing our grandfather's shoes, they don't come with the same disciplines, work ethics, and mindsets that our grandfathers did. And so in replacement of that is a desensitized culture that is really being indoctrinated to think that you will own nothing and be happy. And that is acceptable. And that is the biggest problem. And Cody breaks it down in a really simple form. If you want to take America back, you need to take ownership back. And if you own nothing, you control nothing. And that is really where the problem actually, like when you get down to it, it lies. But it goes bigger than that. There's philosophical and psychological reasons. There's the healthcare system. There's the institutions, there's our education system, there's pop culture, the media, there's influence. You talk about the negativity in this country. I just ran across a statistic that said 7 out of 10 Americans are negative on this country. Like, where else in history has 70% of the country been negative on the country that they reside in, especially when it's America, which, by the way, has only ever been around for a few hundred years, where our history is nothing. We have a long way to go to prove that America even works. And right now, the trajectory is saying one thing and one thing only. By the end of this next decade, we will have lost this country. Just look at the trajectory alone. Look at the amount of people that are falling into debt. I mean, the difference between the fat cats at the top and the peasant serfs at the very bottom, it's becoming so far apart that it's almost disgusting, first and foremost. Yeah. And it's the middle class that's being eviscerated. But this is not capitalism. They would like you to believe this is capitalism at work. This is not. It's actually socialism at work. This is what happens in socialist countries.
Absolutely, yeah.
And you're right. They're going after the police. They're going after race. They're going after age. They're going after gender. And now they're confusing children with biology, something that I thought was going to be sacred. How is biology being something that's even being communicated as a confusing point of scientific topics? Wrap your mind around that for a minute. Like a little boy that has all the instincts of a little boy is now being told at an early age while their mind is still developing that you may not be a boy. I mean, you're a father. Speak to that. Like, you want to talk about what's wrong with America. You want to talk about like why people like us think about the Roman Empire? Because history repeats it fucking self.
And we're so impressionable. I mean, being a father, like, I love that metaphor you The Buddha story's got that you raise your kid in a protected garden for a while, and then eventually, any good father, you want to tear down the walls and give them the courage to go forth, right? But man, my wife and I were very deliberate. My kids do not consume.
You said something to me, and it stuck with me. I don't know why. I've not left my brain. I don't know where you said this. You were talking about this topic, which is a hard topic to talk about for many. To me, it's so stupid. It's not even worth conversating because we don't care what people choose to do with their personal lives. We just don't want stuff being jammed down children's faces, period. End of story. Like, let kids be kids. Keep innocence protected.
But
I
think I know where you're going, yeah.
You talked about, like, if this topic of transgenderism around your little boy, one of your little boys, like, what it would do to them. Describe how you describe that other time.
You know, as a parent, you know your kids. And you also know their ages. Like, they're just so innocent and open. And they ask a million questions about everything. And I was just thinking of my 7-year-old. And I just know him. And if you would introduce in his consciousness as an option that he could choose his gender and that he might not be a boy. Now, the whacked out, demonic, liberal, whack job person is going to be like, well, maybe he is a boy. Maybe you ought to talk to him. I mean, seriously, that's how crazy they are. But if he, in his innocence, he would ask 1,000, if he heard that once, if he heard it as an option, and it were given credibility by some symbolic authority figure on a commercial, just endorsing it, some little fragment of something, if it got into his innocent little brain, he'd ask a million little questions about it. And just temperamentally, some temperaments, they obsess and they worry about things, which is very natural for certain temperaments. It would have a real huge, and that's just one micro exposure. So when you see, think about this for a moment.
Would it stress him out?
Oh, it would stress him out. He'd be worried about it. It would like
that's
fragment.
That's what you said that caught my eye.
Yeah,
it would stress his little mind out.
It would stress his brain out because it's so against the fabric of reality that he would have unconsciously all kinds of schemas he'd have to resort out, and he'd have 1,000 questions for me, right? And I saw this reel. It was some famous, I think it was an NFL player or some professional athlete talking about, there's no way in hell my little boy's hearing that damn message. And I sympathize with that profoundly. And so now when you see, in terms of this transgender thing, the incredible data coming out on the number of kids that are all of a sudden confused about their gender. My kid, if he got one microdose, I know as a father it would confuse him. Now imagine just the full gates being open, and they're just consuming it on social media.
Teaching this in school.
Yeah, teachers, exactly.
And then keeping it from the parents.
And it goes, so it's a deep topic. It's like an assault on reality. It's not, it gets deep. Like philosophically, they take what is good and beautiful and they invert it and make it confusing. And you have to wonder, I mean, ultimately it gets philosophical, even religious, like at a fundamental level, it's a false, evil ideology behind it, however you frame it. Like the roots of the ideology behind this are dark.
Yeah, it 100%, and it really stems from the lack of God in this country. They've replaced government with God. Now, government is the God by the standards that they're setting. And what's crazy, and what I love about Cody, I keep referencing her, is she puts these people on screen. Beer belly, just sloppy guys. There you go. That's one of the most powerful people in the world. And she looks at him and she's like, you guys will run circles around him, but you're not playing the same rules that he's playing. He has a different game and a different set of rules. He understands one thing that you guys don't, and it's the power of ownership. And she really broke it down. And I mean, I suggest you consume that content because it will challenge you to think about where does ownership exist and how can you acquire it yourself to be able to preserve something that allows you to play the same game with the same rules that they're playing. Thing is this, we're all searching for salaries, right? Trust me, Warren Buffett on paper makes $100,000 a year in a salary. He doesn't fucking make his money in a salary. You don't want a salary. Actually, you want as little salary as possible. People like, you know, they're bragging about, oh, I made $500,000 last year. That's not good. You don't want to earn in salary or dollars. You want to earn in dividends and stock options. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
you want to be playing a totally different game. Like, people don't get it. Like, being a high earner means nothing. That is not where wealth's created. And you cannot make an impact or have any voice or power worthwhile if you do not understand this game. But when you're playing a different set of rules, it instantly puts you on the defense. You're never going to be winning. First of all, there's levels to this. It's crazy. But at the end of the day, they've replaced God with government. And these people that are running the government are little trolls. They literally are. They're nothing special. There's nothing different about them from you or me.
Yeah.
And these are cracky people. Like they just are. Like they're not who I look at as a real leader. And somehow they've risen all the way to the top by playing their scammy little games with their pens and their lawyers. They literally are taking over the world. They don't need to fire bullets. They don't need, they can literally indoctrinate and screw you over in a million ways. And the more they suppress people and they keep this information from them, the harder it is for America to take back Main Street. And that's the goal. The middle class have got to be strong for freedom to exist.
That's one of the links to the Roman times, is because people are they're hypnotized by the media and the distractions, and it's at least what I've read about the Roman Empire. The gladiator fights, all the depravity, all the entertainment served a function to distract the populace. They got
100%.
So those who are seeking to
kill,
usurp power,
or let's live.
Yeah, totally,
It's all-
symbolically. Yeah, and it's crazy to think the mechanism of how they did that without social media. But now the gates are wide open. It's in everybody's hands. I mean, people are just programmed and distracted. I was at a potluck. If this friend listens to this, I mean, no, well, great guy, and he's looking for a different job. Going back to your point about ownership, all work is honorable. All work, and companies rely on employees. So this is not at all a disparagement, but it showed a certain temperament. He was crestfallen about the lack of seeming opportunity, because he has a very specialized kind of position with the company, and he's looking for different opportunities, and there's very few out there that pay well in terms of the salary thing. But it just struck me that this is an individual who temperamentally or through, he just hasn't even explored the ownership. It's like temperamentally, wasn't. And so I was talking about, have you ever thought about running your own business or starting a company or a franchise, all in the whole ownership domain of thinking? Like many of my clients, they're investors. I do life executive coaching, but my clients happen to be people who, they wake up, they seek to create their opportunities. They don't go out and look for opportunities, they create them. And it's a totally different way of thinking for a lot of people. It's very interesting, and I don't know if it's temperamentally driven, societally driven. There's so many factors, but to grow up as an employee mentality versus, like you were saying, Eric, it's not about acquiring a high salary as much as it is acquiring.
Well, that's what they want you to think. That's what they want you gossiping about and chit-chatting about. Like, that ain't the game, though. That's not.
Yeah.
You're playing by a different set of rules, period, end of story. But along this pathway of really robbing the middle class, and what's crazy, jumping off that point real quick just to highlight this note, through COVID, there was more advancement for their cause than maybe anything in the history of this country. They had a bigger trajectory swing that fast forwarded and moved the needle so fast. I mean, in a second, they made something that was historically legal, and it was actually the game changer for their agenda. That was ballot harvesting, mail-in votes that you with no signature verification and no ID needed to have a vote. Jeanette and myself, my wife, we have not lived in the state of Nevada for going on 13 years. And in that last general election, we had 2 ballots come in the mail for her and me from the state of Nevada. Now, I have not been registered to vote there in a long time. I voted in Idaho many times since this became my primary residence. But number one, that's illegal. How do they pull up old voter rolls, send us something to our new address in Idaho? I should have freaking voted and sent it back, because guess what? Someone else did in our names. When we I had a hunch. I called after the election. You can't tell who you voted for, but you could see if a name was cast in your vote. And sure enough, Jen and I both had cast the votes. Now, I ripped up ballots that came in the mail for me. You want to tell me there wasn't massive fraud happening, at a level that was unfathomable?
Massive. I think it's willful blindness for people to not
media doesn't talk about
the
it.
level of corruption. Yeah.
No, even Fox. Everyone says it's such a conservative network. They didn't even go near this subject.
I think that's probably one of the most jarring things for many people in the public discourse right now, is just how many millions of people are easily duped. And not in humility, I have to say, I'm sure I'm programmed with biases. None of us can escape conditioning and programming at some level, but the levels of it where something corrupt is in plain sight, and people don't acknowledge it. It reminds me of that classic children's fable, "The Emperor Has No Clothes." The emperor's walking naked, and the child's like, "The emperor's not wearing any clothes," and all the adults are pretending like he's wearing clothes. That's disturbing to me. Like, to see how.
Yeah. It doesn't.
How people like
it's
with
not hard
the
to
election
miss.
as an example. Yeah, it's not.
But
But
it's-
doesn't that blow your mind? That I actually think there's a lot of people of goodwill that don't see, because you can't just explain it away like they see it. They're either
Yeah.
willfully ignorant or they're blind.
Or,
Like what-
it's intentional and evil.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, oftentimes I would historically would have excused something as ignorant, and now a lot of what I'm seeing from certain places,
Intentionally
I put
malevolent,
to evil, pure evil.
Yeah.
And with COVID, it was crazy just how far they advanced this narrative. You don't need to go into all the facts or
Yeah, yeah.
details, but it seemed like it was everywhere, and you could not avoid it. But they got something out of it that was a game changer. It allowed a future president of the United States to not have to campaign, to comfortably sit in a basement and do nothing, literally do nothing.
Yeah.
No interviews,
No urgency.
nothing.
They had it in the bank. They didn't. What was the yeah.
And now I wondered that whole time, how is he so cavalier and calm? Like,
Yeah. And the whole, anyway, we could
Crazy.
go so the
Yeah.
theater of January 6th.
but here's the deal. If that's true, just play devil's advocate for the people that question this, and I don't think we have a lot of listeners that don't think along these lines anyway. But just if that is true, what does that mean? Just assume that there's a chance that what we're saying has some validity. What does that mean?
As in,
It's
is
not
there
a-
a republic? Yeah, it's a.
You no longer have a republic, let alone a democracy. You've just established a banana republic. You've established socialism in all its glory. And you will see what happens. It is undeniable how this ends. And I promise you it doesn't end well. But you're right. You're looking at the police and the record amount of retirements that have happened. Let me ask a question. What would happen if there was someone breaking in your house, some tragedy happening right in front of your face with your family there, and you go to call 911 and nobody shows up? Let me ask you another question. What would you do if you go to turn your light switch on while you're on vacation in Los Angeles? Let's just say you had an overnight stay there, because I know you don't go to LA.
No.
And you go to your hotel room in the middle of LA and you go to flip the light switch on and the lights don't come on. What happens if a solar flare crushes this earth? Like, you just have to consider the state of affairs of this country if one of these types of events starts happening. Now, the trajectories over there, the amount of retirements, the amount of people that are not enrolling in the military that historically would go proudly serve this country. You're looking at like the demasculation of alpha males, the ones who historically
the Marines don't field enough people. They
we can't even answer what a woman is.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the state of affairs of the reality.
I mean, people joke about this trend, but there's no surprise people think about the Roman Empire.
Exactly. We're getting all to these points. Now,
Yeah.
I will say this. I'm such a positive mindset that I don't let these thoughts linger very much, because I want to control what I can and I want to do my part in fighting back, which is part of why we did this show. It's why we formed Man on a Mission to begin with.
Individual can do. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm an outlet to fight back, but I want to be wide aware of the reality. I don't want to be ignorant to that. I want to be very in tune with it, and I want to put myself in a position where, worst case scenario, I can win. I can put myself in a chance to survive and fight. And again, like, I'm in North Idaho. You try to break into my neighborhood. There's an army around where we operate. Doesn't mean you can't break through. Doesn't mean there's not holes and gaps and opportunity, but it just means that I trust all my neighbors. If the light switch go off in our neighborhood, our entire neighborhood, thousands of people would band together and have each other's backs. If you're in the middle of Los Angeles, I don't think it's going to be the case. I think it'll be rape, pillage, and plunder. It just makes you look at your situation and where you're at, and it makes you, number one, I'm very appreciative of our situation, but I had to place myself.
This was a
there.
national trend too. There's tens,
all
of
over
thousands
America,
of people across the world. A friend of mine moved to Spain, and he talks often about the things he admires about the traditional culture, and forget its downside, but people have really reevaluated, where do I want to raise my family? What kind of people do I want to be my neighbors?
And the blind keep walking down the road, acting invincible, like nothing bad's ever going to happen. It may not happen in this lifetime, but as Andy Frisella says, if we don't get this right, your kids are fucked. That's his words, like directly, that I heard 2 days ago.
Yeah.
And he's right. There's not a lot of Americans that have the courage to step up and say that. I want to be one of the ones that have the courage to say it, but also has a plan of how I'm going to fight along the way.
It's interesting, too, if you're a student of history, speaking of the Roman Empire, though, if you just go back over the centuries, if you're at all a student of history, civilizations rise and they fall. I mean, cities are built on other cities.
You know,
there's religious, persecution. There's takeovers. It seems to be like the pulsing wave of humanity throughout all of time. If you look throughout
there's one difference in America that I will say that I will note. Now, the founding fathers screwed up on one thing. It was a giant error, but there's no way they could have foreseen that there'd be giant, 100,000-pound machines that can fly in the air and move people from the East Coast to the West Coast so quick.
Yeah.
They never would have assumed that someone would want to be a politician for a career because there's no money in it, right?
Yeah.
They would never assume that if you were in California to cast a vote in Washington, D.C., that you drive across the country and you do that for your entire life. They really screwed up on term limits, but they didn't think someone was going to be able to come across the country in a horse and buggy often enough to want to do that longer than 2, 3, 4 years max.
Yeah.
So they screwed up there, but where they really got it right was the Second Amendment, because it's the one defining difference when you look at other cultures around the world that have come and fall, was our people are armed very well in America. The Second Amendment really gave the people the power to protect themselves, not from their enemies or from their neighbors or from criminals.
Yeah.
The Second Amendment was put in place because we learned some grave lessons from Europe and the world history far beyond America. And that was, you need weapons to protect yourself from your own government. And what's crazy, I think about these kind of quirky things all the time. When I was a kid, liberals were interesting to me, like that sort of the difference between conservative mindsets and liberal mindsets. They didn't trust the government at all when I was a kid. They didn't want the government going near them. They were the ones that would never in a million years take a pill that the government says, here, swallow this. They definitely wouldn't say, give me the shot. You know what I mean? Like, it's weird now how that's sort of flipped on its head in a sense. Yeah. Like the peace-loving, earth-loving, like hippies of liberals of my generation, like they would go nowhere near government. Now these people seem like government is their god. And it's like conservatives now have completely lost their trust in it. It's almost like they've switched in some ways. I don't know if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, I'm trying to think historically what was the shift. Whether I think the government has progressively adopted.
They were anti-pharma, big pharma. Now we're anti-big pharma, and they're like, like, give me the shot. Like, you know what I mean? It's a little wild how trusting certain people are of things that are blatantly bad for you. Like, quite clearly, the government does not have their best interests out for you, the little guy that they claim they do. But, my faith in the government as I've gotten older has gotten less and less. When I was a kid, I had a primary, faith in our military, and I did. There's some good people in it, but I'll tell you what.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I don't feel that anymore.
It's
not
weird
as convincing.
It's weird being a parent in today's world, because we raise our children. We're more conservatively inclined. We read the great books, and we're exposing them to great literature and so much of that the value of a patriotic love of country and all those things. But at the same time, even at a young age, I mean, I suppose it's the wise thing. It just makes me sad that I can't say with confidence to my children, like, trust that. I feel like, wow, maybe there was a time, or maybe that would have been, maybe I would have felt just as ignorant or naive recommending they.
Well, did you see the new dress code in the Senate? Like the rules of the dress code have changed.
I heard
it's a mockery.
I saw some meme on that.
Well, that guy John Fetterman, who wears baggy shorts and a huge hoodie and stumbles in.
Yeah.
I mean, about as incompetent a human as you can get. No offense, just is what it is.
That John Fetterman represents the fall of the Roman Empire.
That's my point. You wonder why we keep talking about the Roman Empire. They've changed the standards of the highest offices in the world. You no longer need to dress accordingly. You can go in looking like a bum or a slob, and it's okay.
But if he legit got those votes, which I presume he did, he was in a very left-leaning demographic. That so many that so many people would allegedly support him.
That's insane. It says a lot about the trajectory of our country.
Good God.
These people are voting the most incompetent mindsets in the world into office. And it makes me question, like, well, why aren't the guys like Andy Frisella or Ed Milet running for president? Guys like even guys that lean a little more left, like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, like, shoot, he promotes hard work. All he does is talk about being the hardest worker in the room. And actually, that's a message that diametrically opposes the liberal standard when it comes to our education system, all the institutions of America, all the indoctrination they spit
it's all-
out,
their whole
the
message is-
participation trophies, all that.
It's based on the victim-perpetrator model, and their whole lens and world. That's the root of like the Marxist dialectic, communism, socialism.
Yeah,
There's
money's
a
evil,
perpetrator,
ownership is evil.
and there's a victim. And the victim, because they're a victim, they have the moral high ground to take what they want from the perpetrator, to take your money, take your land, take your.
Here's what's crazy,
They would
though.
avoid any personal responsibility narrative whatsoever.
But what's crazy is the richest people in the world literally are liberals, and it's such a ruse to think that they're not protecting their own. You get my point, kind of.
Yeah.
It's such a scam, and that's the point. They want you to believe that as they get rich off the taxpayers. They're acting like oftentimes you'll hear the liberals say that the billionaires need to pay their fair share.
Ideologically,
What a joke!
Do you think they're ideologically? I mean, we're using the word "they," so it's like, who are we referring to? But like, who do you think that many of them are just so ideologically blind, or that they're so intelligent that they know that they're profiting on the falsehoods they're spewing? You think?
Come on.
So you fall in the position that.
They know exactly. Look
I have a great
at their
quote.
salaries, and look how much wealth they've created over the lifetime of them being in office. Those two things do not add up. Joe Biden has never built anything. He's never built a business. He's never signed the front of a paycheck. How did he acquire so much wealth?
Yeah, it's so
you look
many
at the
of them.
Biden crime family. These motherfuckers have created over $100 million
obvious, yeah.
in net worth. No, but where did it come from? You would have to be like, just think about return on the paycheck that he gets while in office all those years. Never creating a business out of
It'd
it.
be impossible to return.
No, those returns would be legendary. Like better than Warren Buffett times 10.
Yeah.
Like you've got to create machines that make money, and for that to take place, you got to have employees and you got to have systems and processes. He had a lifetime of public office. Like the whole time as he's getting rich, and the media turns a blind eye. No one says a damn word. And they just keep getting rich. Now they're all in on it, left and right. Like these long-term people that keep getting wealthier, the McCarthys of the world.
What do you think makes the populace so vulnerable to supporting them? It's because the populace isn't, quote, all in on it. Like, but they still.
The media, it's such a racket. The whole thing is a racket from my perspective.
So are they preying on the naivete and ignorance of the populace? Because I think like the far left liberal position comes from what seems to be heartfelt but is profoundly naive and ignorant. Like,
it does more harm than good.
You hear, like, here's an example. Here's an example. My kids were reading some book on the world and environment, and it had this kind of liberal edition, like the planet Earth is in peril. Right?
Sure, it's a great message.
Yeah, yeah, and we should take care of the earth, take care of the planet, keep it clean. I love all those things.
Of course
but
you
you
do.
could see all the politicized framing of the languaging to tug on the child's heart.
Yep.
So that heartfelt child's going to read that.
Yep.
And we had a great conversation with my 10-year-old because he started to get all emotionally. And we talked about there is pollution.
Sure.
And you could just feel
And
the
when I was a
setup.
kid, it was called global warming.
Yeah,
when I was
yeah.
coming up,
Now
it was
it's-
global warming. You know, we wonder why they took that word warming away.
Yeah.
That's crazy to me. We keep talking about how the world's heating up.
I know.
By 10 years ago, the standard today, like half of Florida should have been underwater. The point is this, right? Even if it was true, like you want to have a good, identify a good why behind it. They politicize that why, and they blame humanity, which gives them cause to say, "Hey, it's overpopulation. We need to have
they
more
could
rules, more
take
red
your
tape, more
freedoms,
restrictions."
take
It's a way to strip freedom.
But I think
they
people
get
vote
rich in
for
the
it.
process. More importantly, this is a business. You look at Al Gore,
Yeah.
he got rich off global warming. And it turns out they took warming out of the name. Now it's climate change.
His predictions haven't come true. I think they play on the heart of the populace. They get like my
course they
naive
do.
10-year-old, and they're just
It's emotions. They
yeah,
play on
pure
emotions.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the game. Is once you know the rules, number one, you can start playing them yourself. Hopefully, as you gain power, authority, fame, you gain influence, whatever it is, where you have some sort of voice that matters, you have a strong, powerful why that aligns you with something that where you can fight back to do good. If you have the potential to be a superhero, and this is really what I learned from guys like Ed Milet, some of these beautiful influences in my life, was that is you need wealth, you need power, you need fame to go out and make a real impact. You can make an impact with nothing. It just won't be that big or profound. You need to gain that. So you shouldn't be afraid of it. As long as your why is more powerful than your insecurities, go after power, but use it for good. Use it to fight back against these evils, to raise awareness to things. And that's really helped me profoundly sort of pursue my highest and best use. And that's how I can turn this negative conversation into something positive. I'm not blind to what's happening, but I'm choosing to do something with it, and I'm going to fight back. But if you're blind to it and doing nothing, that's a problem. Or if you see the problem and you just bitch at the TV, you're also part of the problem.
That's probably one of the, at least to me, one of the most inspiring philosophical ideas. I know Jordan Peterson articulates it quite a lot.
And he's doing his job.
Yeah, but he bases his argument is in the face of such suffering and burden, it comes down to the divinity of the individual, which definitely aligns with a Christian worldview, which is to say, what can you do? Well, like you said, Eric, you can start with yourself and individually shoulder as much responsibility as you can to make the difference you can in your own life.
100%.
It's a pure encouraging empowerment play.
Yes. I still think, going back to my original point, we do have some saving graces here. The Second Amendment is a tricky one for them to get around. They're trying their best. They're going to try to do it. They're going to keep going after it.
What are the bulwarks like that hold us up?
Yeah, so that's an important one. It's going to be very, very hard to turn on your people when there's more arms than people, first and foremost. That is a tricky one. They're going to have to figure out how to do it. But you look at all the red tape and all the restriction. Like, that's one of these another question that, to me is pretty black and white. That an armed society is a safest society. If you knew, if I live in a state that's heavy on gun laws.
There's a lot of data on that.
Yeah, and I'm an easier target. There's a good chance that if you were a criminal, you're going to pick the path of least resistance. If you know that guy's armed, you're probably not going to mess with him. You see what I'm saying? Like, an armed society where I see the gun in the guy's pocket, it's probably safer. Like, you look at something bad happen, you want a guy like Eric Rock around that's armed, that knows how to use this weapon as good as he knows how to use a pen. You know what I mean? You're going to want someone like me or you that it can defend themselves in the room when something goes bad. Like, it's just the way it works. And if you have a family and you care about them, you should be proficient in firearms. I grew up around weapons. I'm not scared of them. There's so many things that can kill you. There's so many different ways that you could be injured or attacked. Like, if you're proficient in firearms, there's not a lot of accidents that happen there.
No.
Like, not if you're trained right. They don't just go off.
No,
they don't just point at you and pull the trigger.
Yeah.
You should obviously be really responsible around children. But all these narratives about why guns are bad and how they harm people, like, it's just like drugs. Like, same thing with drugs. Like, well, drugs are illegal. Cocaine's illegal. Like, heroin's illegal, fentanyl's illegal, and it's killing a record amount of people right now in America.
Yeah.
Like, you make something illegal, you think the problem just goes away magically?
Yeah.
No. You only make it easier for the good guy to get assaulted if you strip weapons out, because by the nature and definition of a criminal, they break laws. But guess who doesn't break laws? Law-abiding citizens. So when you have a law, just like you have laws on drugs, it's only the law-abiding citizen that does not obey the law, or that actually obeys the law. And so you disarm that person, but do you think you disarm the criminal who already has the gun illegally? No, you just make your targets easier. Like, the psychology around some of this stuff is so absurd to me. It just doesn't make sense. Yeah. It's just logical thinking. But at the end of the day, as you indoctrinate young generations, one generation at a time, the one good thing about them, what they're really smart at is they played the long game. Since the 1950s, since this great society concept came around, you look at, again, I talk about trajectory a lot because it's in the numbers. It's undeniable. When you look at the 1950s, the amount of murders, the amount of deaths, and I'm talking about ratios. I'm not talking about blatant numbers. I'm talking about numbers based on populations. Yeah. And then you compare those statistics to this generation and this one and this one and this one. And you can do it in all categories. Crime, you can do it in overdoses, you can do it in hospitalizations, you can do it in heart disease. I mean, pick a domain to do it in. We are getting unhealthier in every domain of life, and the trajectory is not good. And then COVID just fast forwarded it.
And it has nothing to do with wealth. I'm a huge fan of, obviously we have a shared sort of conservative view. Thomas Sowell, he talks about, the rate of criminality in broke black neighborhoods in 1948 was practically nothing.
Exactly.
And they had nothing.
So true.
And then today they have maybe a little more, yet the rate of criminality is through the roof. So I want to ask you a question. So you were saying the Second Amendment like the question is like, what is going to stand in the trenches to hold up freedom? We have the Second Amendment. Some people used to think the rule of law, although you see that being so distorted and warped by the nature of the judiciary.
It's being manipulated at the highest levels right in front of our face. Just look at everything.
People don't trust the rule of law.
Yeah. Just look at everything that's happened even at the level of the President of the United States.
Yeah.
You look at what how they've weaponized the DOJ,
I think it's psychologically
the
unsettling
FBI
to a lot of
against
people.
one political party, and how they've used it to harbor criminality in another.
Yeah.
It's so blatant.
Yeah. Yeah.
But again, at the end of the day, what are the things you can be doing? Like, how do you create your own little economy?
What's
Not
your personal answer to and of course people rely on their faith. I know a lot of people.
Yeah, well, according to faith and scripture, this thing's going to get a lot worse before it gets better.
Well, by that I mean like what makes America great is the substructure of the Judeo-Christian faith. But that's also eroding. A lot of people are stepping away from religious structures.
Yeah, it's all by design. You know what I mean? Like Marxism has no place for a God, period. And they're playing that out perfectly. The tenor, the tone, everything. Yeah. But I would just say, like, to keep, we're all going to live and die. We all have a certain amount of time, how we want to use our energy, how we want to use our bandwidth and our power that we have. It's important to understand the facts and the truth, but then to be able to articulate that into some sort of energy that can channel, that keeps you positive, happy, moving forward, not feeling defeated.
Yeah, exactly.
You've got to learn the rules of this game so that you can take this country back. Main Street has got to be rebought by real Americans, period. They have to take back actual ownership, number one. Number two, you have to create your own economy. You do. And it's not just the economy that is around you in the way we traditionally understand economy, but the economy of your emotions and your mindset. You've got to take control of that. That's a very important also distinction between living a happy, abundant life and living really like a mindset.
Classically self-mastery, yeah.
Yeah, right. It doesn't mean you're blind to this. So often I see people that's always happy. They never talk about these types of topics. And I'm like, man, like, is that ignorance? Like, is it
men across the world think about it every day.
Blissful? Yeah. It goes back to this whole topic of the Roman Empire. Like, everything we did came from this whole topic of these type of people. Let's hear what they say, too.
Yeah.
I wrote back and I said, do you ever think about the Roman Empire? And it's the quickest response I got, yes. And then Anna, who works here at the show, but
Joy Behar says it's weird.
This guy writes back, what about it? The culture, economy, military tactics, value, and the great gladiators, worldly influence? Because if the answer is any of those, then all the time.
So good.
I made the mistake of asking the family chat of Al and his sons, and they're still responding. They're like on page 4. But then I did the smart thing, which I texted my gay senior counsel, Ken, Lee, and Mario, and I said, do you ever think about the ancient Roman Empire? And Lee said, just the Roman boys.
Okay.
Fascinating. I haven't seen this.
Yeah, especially those gorgeous gladiators from Equatorial Africa.
They just
texted Manny and Gabriel, and Manny said, no, unless it comes on television or radio, I guess. And he said, wait, are you talking about like Vikings?
ignorant.
I said, no, more like gladiators. He was like, I guess it's like a bravado thing. I mean, no. So I texted Gabriel, and he started giving me a very collegiate response. Yeah. He was like, well, in literature, if you think about it, it really stands for virility. And so I have read in some of my studies, and I said, okay, thank you, sweetheart. I said, but do you think about it? He was like, so yeah, I guess maybe like every month, maybe.
Okay, that's still that time of the month. It's that time of the month for them.
Yeah,
I think about the Romans.
Ask my husband, because I swear, hand on my heart, at Carly, our producer's wedding, he brought up at the table the Roman Empire.
Wait, I remember.
It was in the context of like American political fallout, and he's like, well, listen, the Roman Empire, so it is a thing.
But the Roman Empire, like, you think it
goes badly.
It goes bad, like,
I know what, I know what's going on in my husband's mind. 24/7. I don't need to ask her. The answer probably is no.
Is no.
No surprise.
I mean, but it's like football, maybe. This is not like football. It's like attacking each other, penetration in the end zone, all that stuff.
These people have no idea. They just
Yeah,
that is it right there. It's right there. It's built. It's built into all these people right there that you're watching.
Even the way they I just think of the little boy, the boys, or all of it. Even
did you hear one said
the poo-pooing of any notion of history? Or,
the little boys. One of them said the little boys.
Oh, totally. And
did
they all giggled and laughed. I asked my gay friend, "What do you think of?" I think of the boys, and they all laughed. The other.
That's another important part of the Roman Empire was the powers so great at the top, the lust, the power that normal relationships between a man and a woman would not do justice anymore. There's famous paintings of this. This is well documented. Their lust and appetite for children was profound, and it's part of the story of the fall of Rome was their appetite for children, sexually, morally corrupt, all moral compasses eroded. And it's crazy when you think about why does that happen with extreme power? It's a profound question to ask, like how, I guess when you could have anything in the world, like your hunger and your appetite your invincibility becomes so great that when you start thinking you are God, you start going where the forbidden fruit actually exists. And once you get a taste of it, as sickening as this is to even talk about, let alone fathom, your ability to touch that and almost with that godlike complex go near that most evil fucking thing, it's heartbreaking, but it's so true in power. And I wonder why this whole concept of sex trafficking, which they say today by people that I trust greatly, people that we know personally, who do this for a living, who fight this evil for a living, say that there's more slavery today, modern day slavery, than at any other time in history. How can that possibly be true? Let me just say this, that if you consider that statistic for a minute and wonder why, it's heartbreaking, but why is it so suppressed? Why is that information literally not the thing they talk about at presidential debates? Why is this not a commercials being made? And why isn't there so much noise being made about this topic historically, at least over the last decade? And why is that information suppressed so much by the media? Why did that movie Sound of Freedom get mocked by so many mainstream outlets and get joked upon like it was some conspiracy theory? Why? Well, because the people that run these big companies, the conglomerates of the world that have taken over anything, like makes you wonder, like, what is their connection to modern day slavery? Like, quite literally, what is their connection to factories in China and beyond?
Even if, like, on The View, they joked, I don't mean to accuse the woman's friends of pursuing boys.
It's a joke.
It was
sickening.
It was joking about, like carefree joking about lustfulness, like, oh, the handsome young Roman boys or whatever. And even if the individual wasn't referring to young boys, at the very least, it's sort of like,
here's the thing.
It's the degradation of sort of the pursuit of virtue and standards and integrity, which takes one back to faith.
I bet you if you can be a fly on the wall and go into some of these situations where this is a tricky area to navigate. Like, I'm thinking there's all kinds of instincts that are coming to my mind. It's like, you wonder what the real truth is and how these people talk about this stuff or how they think about little boys. Yeah. How certain cultures, and even in America, like the things they tangle with and the things they talk about.
A lot of the fathers of Marxism in academia wrote apologetic discourses on sex with kids.
Now they're giving it a new name now. They think pedophilia is not a nice name. They want to call it minor attracted persons out of respect for the pedophile.
Yeah, it's
like you hear people in the gay community making bold points about this, and it's bizarre to me that you're going to try to defend the assault on innocence. Like, the whole message and point about this topic, really, this specific topic, is just the preservation and the protection of innocence. Innocence and protection of animals. It's just the same as the innocence and the protection of children. Like, you don't, like when I look at like the eye through the eyes of a dog, like I see that same innocence as the eye of a children. And it's like just this beautiful, innocent thing. Like you wouldn't want to go hurt it.
Itself.
You wouldn't want to go beat it. You wouldn't, same thing with a child, like same thing with it. Like, it's just like, there's sort of like a moral compass that like you want to preserve these innocent things in life, at least for me. Like it's a big, profound thing for me. It's one, anything that's innocent, I'm like, man, how do you hurt it? How do you go near it? Like I feel that same sick, twisted thing for people that will like hurt animals or throw cats out of a car while they're driving on a freeway. Like anything torturous or weird to anything innocent, all that to me is the number one thing that makes my stomach turn, all of it. And I think it gets down to my appreciation for life. I have such high admiration and respect for life itself that now I struggle even killing bugs. Cause I'm like, man, that's just a little life trying to survive. Like for you to just come and crush it without a second thought, like you have no respect for life. That thing's just trying to eat. It's got a family. It's trying to get home somewhere. It's hungry. It's trying to get from point A to point B, and you just came and fricked up its life.
Yeah.
Like that drives me nuts. Yeah. But when it comes to children, like that's crazy. Like there's so many children around the world that are being abused, that are being assaulted and hurt. We have a moral decay problem in this country and beyond, really.
It's profound.
It's everywhere, but I guess it's this. And I struggle with, I'll be honest, I struggle with this. Like, it's hard for me. Like, I have got to work so hard on my faith. And I'm always working to get closer to God and better at it. Because how could this happen? How can some of these tragedies happen?
How is evil suffering explicable?
How is it winning? Why does it feel like it's winning?
Yeah, man, there's so many.
I get bothered by it.
Yeah, that's one of the deepest. It's like that reminds me of that Mortimer Adler's great books of the Western world. One of the deepest questions, like the philosophical problem of suffering, and if there is a divinity or a God, how could he or that allow this? I'm not going to pretend to answer that, but
I can only break it down to
the problem of Job and
that you can't have good without evil. You can't, because it's almost like it's a perfect system. The difference between light and day, free will, between bright and dark, like between good and evil, like everything needs a counterbalance, or you can't have the thing on one side. Like you can't have this without this, because there wouldn't be this without this. This is the only thing that differentiates from this, that gives this some meaning. Like you wouldn't appreciate life without death, right? Like you'd have no appreciation for it. You'd have no respect for it. So there must be death in order for life to even exist, which is a crazy concept. But it sort of somehow gives me a peace around the whole thing, that it's a perfect circle. But what's great is you have a choice in this life if you're going to do moral things or you're going to do immoral things. And here's what's great. We don't need a set of laws to know if something's moral and immoral. You know if you're hurting something innocent. You know if you're doing something bad. You know if you're living one way in front of a camera or out and in public, and another way secretly you're behind the doors doing something. You know there's a code that's there that is built into our anatomy and our DNA and our biological metric system.
I think that gets impaired. It's interesting. I read this. I won't pull it up. It'll take a minute. But I decided to read Brothers Karamazov. I haven't read a fiction book in years. I've read a lot of books, but anyway, it's by Fyodor Dostoevsky, and my friend knew I'm going to read it, so he texted me a quote from it. But he said it's this great quote where he talks about don't lie to yourself. Because the more, this is a paraphrase by memory, the more a man or woman lies to him or herself, the more he becomes depraved and he loses touch, almost like with his capacity, like you're saying, Eric, you know that whether you're violating innocence or not. If you lie to yourself and lie to others, over time, the tragic consequence of that is you can't even trust yourself. Like your discernment. I think a lot of people are, when you make missteps enough and live in a lie enough, it's hard to outside of some grace. It's hard to disentangle yourself from your impaired discernment faculties. Like people are literally. It reminds me of like Christ on the cross. Forgive them; they know not what they do. They know not what they do. Like they're still accountable for whatever you do. But man, people's level of ignorant impairment is profound to me, and it makes me personally grateful to have any sense of faith or even to have a moral compass and a notion of right and wrong, I consider to be a profound gift. Like, like some people grow up without that, and they get into such dark, confusing places.
Yeah.
Anyway.
There's a book I read when I was young. It was called Atlas Shrugged. Do you remember Atlas
Ayn
Shrugged?
Rand, yeah. I haven't read it actually, but I've read all.
There's a lot of profound literature out there
Rand,
that really tackles a lot of unique, interesting angles that gets you to.
Why
think
did that
about
one come
it.
to mind? Yeah.
Well, you just talked about this battle that's happening inside your mind, and it just reminded me of that. But there's a lot of great literature out there. But at the end of the day, I would say that faith is such an important component, and I can't understand how you can have a life without it. Even though I said I battle with it, trying to fully come full circle with it. And because I have so many questions.
Yeah, you're being intellectually honest.
100%.
Yeah.
But to not have something to battle or contemplate even would be a huge struggle, even a much bigger struggle for me. To write it off, to be an atheist would be a challenging notion for me, especially as I'm so cautious about and I have so much emotion for the value of life. I care so much about life that I can't even kill spiders anymore. As pathetic as that may sound to some, I just view it as a life that's trying to get somewhere.
Yeah.
And I have profound respect for it. And I don't like spiders. They're they'll get me at night when I'm sleeping.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I don't know. There was a big spider at this event and someone stepped on it. It was a tarantula. It was big and it was dead. And someone put it in a cup and they put it on their table. It was kind of a joke, like a centerpiece.
Yeah.
And I was sad. Deep down, it bothered me because that spider was just trying to go home.
Like an irreverence for life. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that if you can quickly kill anything and not have any care or concern with it, you might be lost.
That's actually pathological. Like one of the greatest things of sociopaths when they're aged 3 or 4, or even a young age, you can diagnose it, is they'll harm something and they don't blink an eye.
Yeah.
And that's a clinical. So to have any carelessness with life, even though you might not be a sociopath.
Yeah, I get that.
It's a
well,
warning.
You know what I respect about hunters? I grew up in a hunting family.
Yeah, they consume.
They love their animal. They thank it. There's prayers being said. I love the native culture.
I love that. Yeah.
My wife's half Native American and half white, but her native side, it's there's a reverence for all things
great
animal.
Spirit for the animal.
Yeah, they thank their ancestors. They thank this food that's nourishing them, and we know that the consumption of animal species below you at every level, it just absorbs it. You talked about this to me about. I don't know if was it Buddhism or Hinduism.
Oh no, I heard. I think it was. I heard reference to this in the Rig Veda. So there's the Bhagavad Gita. There's another classic Eastern text called the Rig Veda, and they characterize lower life subserves higher forms of life, and almost like this. It's kind of beautiful the way it was described, like a great chain of being. You think of a whale, it consumes these smaller fish, and it all has a higher. And it kind of very much dovetails with the Christian idea of the Garden of tending to the garden and being a steward of the garden. Like the cow blesses the. But I hear what you're saying. People who don't respect or are careless with life or harm life or that. Yeah.
Well, yeah, if you just go shoot an animal and you grab it and it's flopping around, and I'm like, man, does that hurt? Are you suffering right now?
Yeah.
Are you in pain?
Yeah.
And you'll see a guy carrying it, dragging I'm thinking of not a quail, but
a predator,
the bigger bird,
bigger bird. Oh, a turkey? Yeah,
not a turkey. Kind of like a turkey though.
Between a quail and a turkey, pheasant.
Pheasant.
Oh, I have a story to tell you.
I've been around a lot of pheasant hunting, and I've shot my own pheasant. It's not like I don't.
My dad stopped pheasant hunting. I haven't told you this story. He used to pheasant on bird hunt, and he took me as a little boy, and he shot a pheasant. We had bird dogs, and I don't remember this. My parents tell this story. And, the dog would bring the pheasant. And, pheasants have beautiful plumage and colors.
Yes, they do.
And apparently, my little blue eyes, I was 9 years old. And I just looked at the bird. I have no memory of this, but my dad tells the story. I looked up at my father, and I was like, Dad, why would you kill something so beautiful? And he said he didn't have an answer because he didn't eat the pheasant. It was like a sport.
Yeah.
And he said, my mom said he stopped hunting.
Huh.
The innocence in my eyes hit him so deeply. I was like, Dad, why would you kill something so beautiful? Apparently, I was taken by the beautiful. And I eat a lot of meat, so I don't hunt, but I've actually thought about elk hunting just
Well, you'll
and do it
respect
in
the
a
process.
reverent way. But,
When you buy meat from a grocery store, you are so far removed from the bloody process, like the defeathering of birds, or
all that. Yeah.
it is a nasty process, cutting the guts out of it. Like I've done all that. I would never be able to kill anything without having to clean the birds myself, or clean, the animal,
the whole thing.
I was always part of it, and it always kind of made me like right on the edge of like I just felt for the animal. But the worst thing that for me as a child was seeing the bird struggling, knowing that it was still alive, and I struggle with that. But you'd see some people have no reverence for the fact that is that bird in pain right now? That's a life form that's in pain, that its nerves are rattling, it's still alive, it's trying to hobble away.
Yeah, the compassion.
You only shot its leg off.
And its pain quickly.
Yeah, and so you see fling the neck around, you twist the neck, bang it, like just no reverence for life as you slam it against a rock. Like I don't know what a better way to kill it would be to take it out its misery, but there's something about that just always got me, and I just feel for everything. So if you go into a store and you eat hamburgers, or you're buying it from a store, and like you've been so disconnected from the process of our ancestors that of course you're going to be your moral compass is going to be off, and that's the point. Like I don't eat a lot of meat. I just don't. I ate meat my whole life, but I was primarily disconnected from it, although I knew the process because I'd done it myself, and it's not pleasant. It never was for me. I don't eat a lot of meat. I hardly eat any meat at all. I'm more of a vegan than anything. Yeah. Although with cheat meals, I would say I hate meat, but I have a profound respect for the animal I'm eating because I was my stomach turned going through the process.
You were in touch with. I saw this great interview. Dr. Andrew Chafee interviewed this 82-year-old rancher in Canada. She's been a rancher her whole life, but they ate their bull, which they had the bull for like 12 years, and he was such a blessing to their ranch. They loved this bull.
He had a name?
Yeah, he had a name. And so the whole family,
I couldn't do it.
They butchered the bull, and the whole family went out of their way with respect to eat him. And they would talk about, and they would reminisce on what an impact. He was apparently like a prize bull. I don't know anything about ranching, but if you get a really good bull, it makes a blessing to everybody involved. But her respect for the animal, and she even teared up in the interview about her respect for the name of the bull that they were consuming. And like you said, like we're so removed from those things.
Yeah, we are. I would say this, if I was going to eat a cow, and I really want to be mindful of this, like how was that cow, how did it live and how did it die? A lot of these cows, they're put into very scary situations. You see their eyes bulging as they literally go down the slaughter line, and they tighten them into little things. The hormones that are released in that cow, the unhealthiness of that situation is profoundly disgusting. And we're so detached from it. If you're a cow that was shot in the head out on a farm while you're grazing, that's one thing. That is something I could have respect and pride for, and in eating that to nourish my family. Yeah, but to have all that adrenaline pumped through a cow, I don't think you've ever seen a scared cow. Yeah. It's not pleasant. And here's the other thing. You don't think that cow knows that all its brothers and sisters ahead of you are getting slaughtered? I don't know. We must be assuming that that's true. But how do you know? Like now, I always question these things. Are cows more intelligent than we realize? Like what makes you think a cow is so dumb, by the way? Like how do you know it doesn't communicate with other cows and have a way to talk about fear and pain and struggles? That's what I've never understood is in the animal world that we assume these animals have no instincts or as far as...
I think they know what's up.
Is understanding between one another. There's no communication going back and forth. Or there's no feeling that matters. What about wolves? Like, just think about different animal species. Like, are they communicating? And that's it. Is like for me, just personally, like I always want to take things and think about the whole thing before I just act.
I wonder, the Genesis conversation. I wonder if in the decline of the Roman Empire they had less respect for their animals. I don't know this.
Well, listen, if you could kill humans with no remorse and have no respect for that, as you conquered and conquered and conquered. Again, like the beauty in this country is we can live these beautiful lifestyles, but we're so far removed from the pain and where it actually exists. As far as like we don't see the wars that are being fought in far off countries. Many Americans don't. Even in the worst standards in this country, we're lucky enough to be born in a time where opportunity is still everywhere. Like you can remove yourself from environment. Say you grew up in South Central LA. It's not easy. It's not that hard for you to move to Wyoming. You could if you wanted to. Like there's enough. It's not like, why is it impossible? Yeah. How? I'll show you 1,000 ways that it's not. Like for you to claim you're stuck in a bad situation in America is a lie. It's a fucking lie. It's a lie.
That goes against the victim perpetrator.
It's a lie. Everything's a lie.
Your opportunities are given to you by.
You have the power of decision in this country.
That's the big.
And people died for that.
There's a line. I mean, yeah, people who own that.
And you know what?
The integrity of the individual.
If you make mistakes more than once, I'm going to come out on a limb and just say this. If you made a mistake more than once, and I've said this before, but if you make a mistake more than once, it's not a mistake. It's a fucking decision. You made a decision. And that's what's beautiful about America, is that you have the power of choice.
You have the freedom to fail.
You can choose.
You know, failures, calamities are often a great inner spiritual blessing. Like people, anyway, this reminds me of analogies with like Al-Anon or 12-step recovery work. You know, so if someone's an addict, in some ways you don't want to enable them too much because you want them to hit so hard.
They got to hit rock bottom.
Yeah,
Everyone's got to hit rock bottom.
Hit a level of humility.
But it's that same mistake twice that is now a decision. You're going to fail many times. You're going to make many bad decisions. But if it's the same thing over and over again, they say that that's the definition of insanity.
Yeah. Expecting a different result.
But it is a decision. You're making a decision. But that's what's beautiful is in this country, you actually have decisions. In many other places and other time frames in the world that you could have been born. Yeah. And so for you to squander that in America now, despite the problems that we're facing.
It's not yet China with, speaking of the Roman
not
Empire,
there yet.
Like the China social credit system that
North Korea.
You're on video if you don't recycle something, and then you get credit deductions, and then your capacity to borrow money is reduced. And everything is all
in other time periods, any sort of prosperity or wealth had to be gifted to you, or you had to be born with the right based on last name. This is the one country where you can come from the bottom of the world and rise all the way to the top.
Still,
and there's countless stories of that, and they never end. But why isn't the media promoting those stories? Why are those not the stories that you hear about constantly? No. It's actually the exact opposite. They're telling you why something's impossible. They're telling you you're too stupid to go get a driver's license, so we need to make it easier for you to be able to cast a vote. Like, it has nothing to do with that. Yeah. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, to me, it's insulting to think that.
Well, they paint them as victims.
That's my point.
These poor people are victims, and they need our help. And
but this is a huge question that could go on and on. This whole idea of why do humans, men particularly, as it seems,
let's wrap that.
Think about the Roman Empire.
There's a lot of reasons.
we just went to a lot of places over that one question. That was cool.
It was fun. It's fun to muse
and you know what? I've always said this. I could be wrong, and that's not me backing down or anything. Like, I'm always up for learning. Like, I'm firm in my beliefs because I've explored so many thoughts. I think about things. Like, I go down rabbit holes. I know what works for me. I know what works around the people that I admire as they get to the places they want to get in life. I'm around some of the wealthiest people in the world, quite literally. I'm around some of the most influential people in the world, quite literally. And in my observation, in my proximity near to those types of giants, they understand a set of rules that you don't, period. End of story. They play by a different set of rules, but they're not smarter, they're not gifted with more, and they weren't born with more.
This agency, ownership, freedom piece, they all value it.
That's it. That's true.
You got to achieve your own ownership. You have the
and that's another thing. Most of the people that came from rags to riches, they have the exact same alignment of mindset with us. It's kind of a fake notion. It's made by fake news media that people really abide by the socialist mentality because they don't. They don't. If they do, they're playing a game to fit the narrative of Hollywood and the powerful media control that they have to abide by for whatever political reason. But the truth is they abide by the same practices that all rich people do. Really extremely rich people, they all follow the same rules. And they all secretly believe the same thing. The thing is they just manipulate laws so they don't affect them. They're called loopholes. They create loopholes for them that you don't have to abide by or that you have to abide by.
Yeah, as they should.
And they don't. But it's saying like, who was it? I think it was it was our boy. It was David Chappelle that had a skit. Maybe I can pull it up real quick. Do you mind if I try before we end?
Yeah, we'll wrap.
But this was really good. So,
a comment on something?
It was on. It was a David. Let's see. It was on. That wasn't it.
Go back.
It was on Trump.
There it is. Second one.
let's have a look at Chappelle's analysis of Trump on SNL.
I'm watching the news now.
This is it.
The end of the Trump era. Now, okay, I can see how.
Oh, I remember this one.
I believe this is the end of his era. A lot of you don't understand why Trump was so popular, but I get it because I hear it every day. He's very loved, and the reason he's loved is because that first debate, I've never seen anything like it. I've never seen a white male billionaire screaming at the top of his lungs, "This whole system is rigged." He said. And across the stage was Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama sitting over there looking at him like, "No, it's not." I said, "Now wait a minute, bro." That's what he said. And the moderator said, "Well, Mr. Trump, if in fact the system is rigged, as you suggest, what would be your evidence?" You remember what he said, bro? He said, "I know the system is rigged because I use it." I said, "God damn."
That's the moment that many of us acknowledged that something unusual was happening in American politics.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
If you
Was
analyze
that,
that though for just a hot second, like the system is rigged, and it's the system that you guys set up that I'm partaking in. Everyone who understands it partook, including Hillary and Barack themselves.
They feigned like it wasn't. Yeah.
Exactly. That's how he knows. How do you know it's rigged? Because I partake in it. And he gave money to the left and the right his entire career, by the way.
Yeah.
There's famous photos with him with every famous person in the world, every liberal on planet Earth. And then he comes out and speaks his mind and you're instantly a racist. It's all crap. Yeah. I mean, but he was the one guy that sort of exposed, from my perspective, things that were like kind of hidden handshakes behind the scenes. Shh, don't tell anything. He was the one guy that sort of dropped a bomb in that, because he's the only one that ever talked about stuff like this. And David Chappelle is exactly right. No one's ever said that. No one ever said, I use the systems. I know it's rigged. It's rigged against the middle class. Yeah. It's rigged against the American people. And who it hurts most is the lower class and middle class, because it keeps them trapped in slaves literally to the government for the rest of their lives. They are now dependent on government the rest of their lives. They do not teach winning in school. They do not teach money in school. They do not teach personal development in school. They teach you how to be a slave, period. And you wonder why we're talking about the Roman Empire.
I'm a man on a mission. I'm a man on a mission.